Alright, welcome back you guys. Here I am in my car, kinda sweaty, but it's gonna be alright. It's the only quiet-ish place I could find to record, and so let's just get to the video. I want to just address the controversy again, I suppose, but specifically we're gonna go over Charlie's second response to vegan gains. And I would like to start off by saying that I'm not really gonna be a drama channel. I don't really want to discuss anything having to do with beef between the two, but I will address points that Charlie makes that are about veganism or relate to veganism and not specifically just vegan gains. So without further ado, let's get started.
The purpose of my video, the point I was making, is the way you conduct yourself, your character, is the worst thing for veganism and the worst look to people that are already sympathetic to your cause.
So I can agree with Charlie here. I watch Vegan Gains content and I will say that his communication style is not very effective when it comes to persuading the person that he's criticizing, right? However, it's sort of like in a live debate, you have two sides, right? They're both going to be arguing their points and sharing their points of views. But at the end of the day, those two parties are not going to change their mind. At least more often than not, they're not going to. It's very rare that they do. But what it does allow is for an audience member, someone who's watching this go under or happen, I guess, they can make their own decision now because now they've seen both sides of the coin. And you're right, I don't think it's the most effective way to communicate to someone that you're trying to convert. But I guess, you know, I'm not going to speak for Vegan Gains, I guess. So I won't say what his motives are and stuff. But it does illustrate something to the people. So it's sort of some form of activism. And I can't say if it's the worst one out there. I think I've seen worse. But I think you're right. I wouldn't do that myself. As you can tell, I'm not very hypercritical. I just like to deal with facts, logic, and trying to meet people where they're at, which we'll go on to in the second point. But yeah, I think you're kind of right. It's the way he talks to people, at least one-on-one or like video to video. It's not meant to convert that person, it seems like. It's definitely not going to be the best way.
You're not going after the actual animal abusers, you're going after people in the fitness industry that eat meat. You went after me because I called out an animal abuser, but I eat meat. You yourself didn't call out animal abuse. I imagine you'll do something for H3H3 because he called So Young out and he eats meat. You're not going after the actual problem. You're going after people that are already sympathetic to it and driving them away. That was my point. I wasn't arguing your beliefs because I'm not trying to convert you to my side or anything.
So what Vegan Gains decides to make a video on isn't up to me, so I don't know why. I can't speak as to why he didn't make a video on So Young or if he's going to make a video on So Young. But I think I can speak to the underlying sentiment that you might have, which sounds like you're saying, when vegans call out animal lovers who eat meat, dairy, and eggs, they are pushing them away from veganism. And honestly, you're probably right. There's some truth to that because most people don't like being called out for something when they don't think they're doing anything wrong. But that's where the disconnect happens. As I've mentioned before, most people aren't really aware of how their purchases affect animal welfare, especially when it comes to food. So people will say one thing, oh, look how terrible this animal abuse is, whether it be from So Young, factory farming, wild game hunters, etc. But with their behavior, they will be directly contributing to animal abuse, you know, purchasing and eating meat, dairy, eggs product. So most people aren't really aware of how the food gets to their plate. And furthermore, even if they realize that it's wrong or something might be wrong with killing animals, they think it's a necessity. So it becomes very important as a vegan activist to meet people where they're at. And I see like this disconnect can happen so easily because there's so many dimensions to it and so many levels of awareness that need to be met before you can truly call someone a hypocrite for their actions. I mean, at the end of the day, the outcomes of animal welfare will be hypocritical. Whether or not you're aware that your food decisions are causing harm doesn't change the fact that the harm exists. It's just you're unaware. So you're not a voluntary participant in a sense, not a voluntary participant. But that's because these companies don't want us to know where our food comes from, right? But that's another tangent that I can go on later. So this is why it's a very fine line to walk, and it's something that I've had to practice and I'm kind of doing now with these videos, is being able to discuss these topics in a fashion that you meet people where they're at, you don't talk down to them, and just recognize at the end of the day, like for me at least, the way I see it, I wasn't aware of these situations and these facts until very recently. I'm a very new vegan, 2 years, maybe not that new, and so I can't blame people for not knowing. But at the end of the day, they do need to be confronted, and there's criticism that is just, as long as we have an open discussion about it, which is what I hope to do here in this video.
Your comparison to me eating a chicken tender being the same as So Young torturing animals on YouTube for entertainment, if not worse, that is just outright ridiculous, and you're fucking delusional. It's hard to have like an actual cohesive argument to that because it is so outlandish. That's like me saying you support the abuse of women and children by buying tickets to a movie. Hollywood has abused child actors and actresses constantly. So by you having seen even a single movie in your life, you have supported that.
Charlie is absolutely right here. These two acts are not entirely equivocal, right? As previously mentioned, most people aren't really aware about how their purchases affect animal welfare. But at the end of the day, both of these actions result... What? You okay? Whoa!
2 hours later.
Hey, sorry about that. I literally just got hit by a car, but luckily there's not much damage on my vehicle. He just sort of dented the side view mirror, and that's about it. It didn't even crack. It's just sort of bent at an awkward angle now. But yeah, I just have to deal with that now, and so kind of my mojo's out of whack. But I think the last thing I said was that at the end of the day, that the animal is going to be killed and there's going to be some suffering involved in either cases, right? Whether it be live eating or buying a chicken tender. However, I do agree that there's varying degrees of guilt, or whatever you want to call it, or malice, I suppose. And it's very similar to how in the court of law there's first degree, second degree murder, and then there's manslaughter, right? So first degree is intentional and planned, second degree is intentional but not planned, and then all unintentional killings go under manslaughter. At least I think so. I might be overgeneralizing, but you get my point. There are varying degrees in which people contribute to animal abuse, whether it be indirect, direct, intentional, unintentional, etc. So what Charlie eating a chicken tender would definitely not be as severe as what So Young does, right? And I think we all can agree that what So Young does, eating animals alive and filming it as entertainment, is pretty disgusting. But that doesn't absolve someone from continuing to eat animal products, right? Here we go into the facts. We raise and kill 70 billion land animals for food every year. And as a matter of fact, there is 11 times more livestock biomass than there is wild mammal and bird biomass combined. So we raise and kill more animals than exist in the wild as a whole, which just goes to show you that most of the cruelty and pain and suffering that we inflict into the animal kingdom happens through our animal agricultural practices. These factory farms are not sanitary, they're overcrowded, they're full of disease, and these animals aren't treated well because they're going to be killed. And the other weird factoid about this whole situation is that the animal products that people eat, these animals are killed at a very young age. So they have a specific slaughter age, and every animal is different. But essentially, they're very young, so they're more like child animals. And so most of what people are consuming is young, adolescent, child animal products, which is also just quite terrifying to think about. And I can go on and on, but I would just recommend watching the documentary Dominion. I'll link it down below. It's free on YouTube, so definitely check it out. It goes into not only the animal agricultural aspect of how we treat animals, but for clothing, medicine, research, and so on, entertainment. Yeah, so definitely check that out.
And if you want to go in the hypocrite route, you're a massive fucking hypocrite. You have a Teespring where you sell Vegan Gains cotton t-shirts. Cotton is not only one of the worst things for the environment, we'll go ahead and set that aside because I don't think you give a fuck about that. We're going to talk about its direct impact on animals. The production of cotton accounts for 24% of the global insecticide market. Insecticide in the cotton production often leaks into the water supply of the nearby areas and threatens biodiversity and directly poisons the animals. So by you selling cotton t-shirts, you are...
I hear this sort of argument made all the time, that animal deaths occur through other practices besides animal agriculture, and therefore some vegans who make those purchases would be hypocritical. And I agree, that's actually is hypocritical. There are other ways in which our economic purchases contribute to animal cruelty, and we shouldn't support them. You're absolutely correct. And that's why consumer awareness is so key, right? So for example, I've learned that Chiquita, the banana company or whatever, they, have a history of abusing their farm workers. And so that's why I don't purchase from them anymore. But my point is that just because some deaths happen elsewhere doesn't detract from the main cause of animal suffering, which is animal agriculture. And let me throw out some more facts once again. Besides the direct suffering that I've already mentioned, animal agriculture directly contributes 51% of the annual worldwide greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation of the Amazon rainforest, consumption of over 80% of the US water use, roughly 30% of freshwater consumption in the world, covers about 45% of the Earth's total land use, and our animal agriculture creates dead zones from runoff, etc., etc. And if you want to know more about the environmental damage that animal agriculture has, I highly recommend watching the documentary Cowspiracy. Last I checked, it was on Netflix, but this is like April 2020, so I'm not sure when you're watching this, but definitely check it out if you haven't, and you can learn more there for sure. So obviously destroying the environment is going to cause not only animal suffering, but human suffering as well. So I find that this factory farming becomes not just an animal issue, but a human welfare issue too. Because as I previously mentioned, animal products are what directly contribute to many of our leading causes of death, such as heart disease, stroke, cancer, and so on. So I think it's important that we don't lose focus, and we should tackle the largest contributor to animal suffering and ultimately human suffering, which is our practice of eating meat, dairy, and eggs. That's just some sidebar, but you're absolutely right. We should try our best to live a life that seeks to limit animal suffering. You're right.
It's silly to ignore the fact that living in this day and age comes at a cost, and unfortunately that cost is animal lives. Vegan gains, you may not eat animals directly or use products that are directly derived from animals, but a lot of the products you use every day have had animals die for that production.
Well, this is also true, and I know why this is brought up, and that's because people don't know what veganism is. So, directly from the Vegan Society's website, veganism is a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. So, is it really that outlandish to be in a position that is trying to limit the amount of cruelty that we inflict into this world? Obviously, just by existing, there, like you said, there's going to be costs. So we're going to be using land, water, and food sources and, stuff like that. And that's going to cause some death. We're going to have to displace some animals. We're going to be doing certain things. But that doesn't mean that we can just maximize or not be making conscious decisions to minimize the death. So ultimately, making this sort of claim is like making an appeal to futility argument, which goes, oh, well, we can't stop all animal deaths, so why bother going vegan? I'm just going to eat my, meat, dairy, eggs. That's the same sort of logic and reasoning that someone could use to justify some murder, which would be like, well, we can't stop all murders, so, what does it matter that one person, me, does some murder? It's not like we can stop all of it. And obviously you don't agree with that sort of reasoning. So why would you even bring that up in this case when just because we can't stop all animal deaths means we can't go try to limit it? Like that's just, it just doesn't make sense.
He goes on to talk about how red meat is, very correlated with cancer. And I don't know what Vegan Gains degree is in, but I actually did go to college for human sciences. Concentration was exercise physiology. I've taken numerous nutritional courses. Richard talks about carcinogens. One of the first things you'll learn throughout nutrition in university, at least in my university, is that's the most obsolete way of looking at cancer-causing agents in food. Every single food out there is a known carcinogen. Even the safe stuff that your mom tucks you in at night saying is safe, will watch over you at night, like broccoli. Broccoli is a very well-known carcinogen. Almonds too. Everything is a known carcinogen, and the way Richard presents this is extremely misleading. He presents the research in a way that makes it sound to his audience that if you eat red or processed meat, you're gonna get cancer.
You say this is told in every nutrition course, but I don't really see how you provide any evidence for that. I never heard this claim. I never found evidence to support this, and I can kind of see maybe where it's coming from, since maybe pesticides might be contributing, and there's all these toxins that we're basically exposed to. So it's not just our food and airborne stuff like that. However, if it were true that all foods were carcinogenic, then we would see different outcomes for different dietary patterns. And it's true, we find different outcomes, but they're not as what you might suggest. In fact, people who follow a vegan diet have a reduced risk of cancer, hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. So eating a plant-based diet is protective, yet if we follow the assumption that all foods are carcinogenic, then why would it be? This is why the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has released their position paper stating that a vegan diet is suitable for all stages of life and has these benefits of providing prevention of certain diseases, some of the most common diseases that afflict mankind right now, actually. And as a matter of fact, there are many plant foods that fight cancer directly. So this notion that all foods are carcinogenic is just downplaying the role nutrition has on cancer, and also downplays the World Health Organization statement, or rather position. Processed meat is a class 1 carcinogen, which means that it is known to cause cancer in humans, and now red meat is considered a class 2 carcinogen, which says that it is more likely, or is probably a human carcinogen. Why would the World Health Organization make that distinction specifically that processed food, or processed meat rather, causes cancer and not all foods cause cancer? Because there's sufficient evidence to support that. I don't think there's any evidence to support that eating a whole food plant-based diet is going to be carcinogenic or cancer promoting. Quite literally, plants have antioxidants that reduce free radical damage, which is one of the causes of cancer. And people who follow a high antioxidant diet do better on their outcomes during cancer treatment.
Another thing you have asked me and many other people, what's your excuse for not going for meat substitutes when you admit that they're better than real meat? Well, not everyone is as financially secure as you are. Meat patties from Beyond are much more expensive than traditional beef patties. It is $12 per pound of meat from Beyond versus the $4 per pound of just regular beef. It is a significant price difference that not every family can afford to make the switch to. In addition to that, in my area, personally, the grocers around here have a very limited selection of vegan options. In fact, there's a single rack that has Beyond, Impossible, and other meat substitutes as well as vegan options. It's extremely rare to come across.
Once again, I completely agree. These mock animal products are not cheap at all. But I just want to make something clear. Veganism is not the mock meat club. It's not like you have to buy these products to be considered vegan. Veganism is just trying to limit the harm we do, and if you're practicing that through dietary means, some of the cheapest foods are all vegan. Like, have you ever gone to a store and checked out like dry rice? Like pennies for a pound or something like that, because I know, like, I've seen 20-pound bags for like $8. You can get dry beans for a very similar rate, extremely cheap, especially if you buy in bulk, which is happening a lot more often now because of the whole quarantine situation. And fresh produce and stuff is not expensive food. These are all very cheap food. This is why in the past it was always the poor people who were eating like rice, potatoes, fruit and veg, and maybe rarely meat, whereas it was the upper class, higher economic status people who had animal products on their plate, cheese, meat, whatever it might be. So it is not expensive to be vegan. I just wanted to make that clear. I know that's not the argument that you made or anything like that. But yeah, just don't feel like you have to go for these products if it's out of your price range. If it's out of your price range, then just stick to the basics. That's what I do. I just wanted to make that abundantly clear, because this is a very common myth that somehow veganism is expensive when it's actually the cheapest diet you can possibly eat. And I think that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. This turned out to be a lot longer than I expected because of that little minor accident. But I hope that you guys got something out of this, and like I said, I just wanted to foster some discussion, and so these were just some of the points that I think needed addressing and would help illuminate some people who were, interested in these topics. So thank you again. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.
Man, y'all just don't know about this life I'm living right now, man. I'm just fucking loving life, bro. You just gotta love that life, bro. Mwah. Love that shit. Love that shit. Love that shit.